The Bengals would be immediate Super Bowl contenders with this one move. If you look at the last decade of Super Bowl champions, you're going to notice something interesting. It seems to be a pretty trending topic nowadays. Almost every one of them had a dominant interior defensive lineman. Aaron Donald with the Rams, Chris Jones with the Chiefs, Vita Vea with the Buccaneers, and look what Philly did last year with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. And then most recently, Seattle Seahawks, Leonard Williams, and Byron Murphy. Different teams, different schemes, but it's the same blueprint. The teams that win championships are the ones that control the middle of the defensive line. And that raises a fascinating question for the Cincinnati Bengals. If interior disruption is important, why hasn't it been the centerpiece of the Bengals defense? Every play in football starts in the interior of the offensive line. The center and the guards control what are called the A gaps and B gaps. Those are the lanes directly in front of the quarterback, and they represent the shortest path to the pocket. Edge rushers usually have to run around the offensive tackles. Interior linemen go straight through the middle. And that difference matters more than most fans realize, because quarterbacks are taught to step up in the pocket when edge pressure arrives. When the rush comes from the outside, the quarterback climbs forward and resets his feet. But when pressure comes directly up the middle, there's nowhere to go. The quarterback can't step forward, he can't set his base, and the entire timing of the play collapses. And the data backs this up. Across multiple datasets used by NFL teams, interior pressure typically arrives faster than edge pressure. Edge pressure often arrives 2.6 seconds after the quarterback has snapped the ball. Interior pressure arrives closer to 2.2 seconds. The difference might seem small, but most quick game passing concepts develop in about 2.5 seconds, which means interior pressure often arrives before the play even fully develops. And when that happens, quarterbacks just can't step into their throws. Their mechanics break down, timing routes break down, and that's when defenses create mistakes. And when you zoom out and you look at league-wide data, the trend becomes even clearer. According to defensive line metrics by Sharp Football Analysis, the best defensive fronts in the NFL are generating pressure on more than 40% of opposing dropbacks. Teams like the Vikings, Texans, the Broncos, and the Rams are producing pressure rates in the 40 to 45% range. That means nearly half of all passing plays are being disrupted by the interior defensive line. But those same defensive lines are also limiting rushing attacks by controlling the line of scrimmage and minimizing yards before contact. In other words, elite defensive lines are doing two things at the same time. They're collapsing the pocket, and they're controlling the run game. When the same pattern shows up across league-wide data, championship teams and playoff defenses, it usually isn't a coincidence. It's a blueprint. And the recent NFL playoffs showed this pattern again. Analysts noticed the 4 teams that were remaining in the postseason all ranked top 4 in the league in pressures generated by their starting defensive tackles. Denver ranked 1st, Seattle 2nd, the Rams 3rd, and New England 4th. The teams generating the most interior pressure were the same teams still competing for a championship. That's not random. Interior pressure changes how quarterbacks play the position. When edge rushers win, quarterbacks can still step up. But when the middle of the pocket collapses, quarterback loses his launch point, and the entire offense becomes less efficient. And this becomes even more important when you look at the quarterbacks that the Bengals have to beat in the AFC. Patrick Mahomes climbs the pocket better than anybody in football. We know Josh Allen can break through edge pressure and extend plays, and Lamar Jackson turns broken pockets into extended runs. All 3 of those quarterbacks are extremely difficult to beat when they step up in the pocket. But interior pressure removes that escape lane. When the middle collapses, quarterbacks have to move earlier than they want to. And even elite quarterbacks struggle when pressure arrives directly up the middle. But there's another layer to this discussion, the division the Bengals play in. Because the AFC North still plays a very run-heavy, physical style of football. The Baltimore Ravens rely heavily on the run game. Cleveland Browns built their offense around an offensive line and heavy run scheme. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have always leaned on controlling the line of scrimmage. Every team in this division wants to run the football. And stopping the run starts in the middle of that defensive line. Interior defensive linemen control the A gaps and the B gaps, the lanes where most run plays begin. If those gaps collapse defensively, the running back is forced outside. But if the interior loses leverage, offensive linemen climb to the second level and linebackers get blocked. That's when explosive runs happen. Which leads us to an important roster building question. If the Bengals know they play 6 games a year against physical run-heavy teams, wouldn't it make sense to build a defensive line designed to win those matchups? Your most direct path to the playoffs is winning your division. And in the AFC North, winning the division usually means surviving some of the most physical football in the NFL. If you want to win the AFC North, you're going to have to win the line of scrimmage. And that brings us to the most interesting question in this entire conversation. If the Bengals know they need more interior disruption, where are they going to find it? Because sure, you can sign a Jonathan Allen right now. Is that really going to move the needle the way you want? But there's one player in the NFL who fits the mold of what the Bengals need right now, and that's Jalen Carter. Carter isn't just talented. He's already one of the most disruptive, young defensive tackles in the league. As a rookie, he generated more than 60 interior pressures from the interior defensive line. That ranked among the league leaders at the position. His pass rush win rate placed him near the top of the NFL among defensive tackles. But what makes Carter truly valuable isn't just sacks. It's pocket collapse. Interior defenders who consistently compress the pocket force quarterbacks off their launch point. And when quarterbacks lose the ability to step into their throws, everything changes. Timing breaks down, mechanics break down, and the offense becomes far easier to defend. Now imagine what that kind of disruption would look like in Cincinnati. If Carter collapses the middle of the pocket, players like BJ Hill suddenly face more one-on-one matchups. Hill is already a productive interior defender, but when offensive lines are forced to double team a player like Carter, Hill becomes much harder to block. Young pass rushers like Shamar Stewart and Myles Murphy would benefit from this as well, because when quarterbacks can't step up in the pocket, edge rushers have a cleaner path to the quarterback. Pressures then turn into sacks, but the impact doesn't stop with the defensive line. When a defense can generate pressure with 4 rushers, the entire defense benefits. Linebackers can play faster, the secondary can keep more defenders in coverage, and the entire defense becomes more difficult to attack. Now here's the obvious question. What would it actually cost to acquire a player like Jalen Carter? And would the Eagles even entertain something like that? A player with his age, talent, and production would obviously command a significant return. A realistic starting point obviously includes a first-round pick and some additional future draft capital. A potential framework could look something like this. The Bengals send their 2026 first-round pick 10, so it's got a little bit more of a premium as well, and then a future third-round pick. Philadelphia then sends Jalen Carter. That type of compensation reflects the value of an elite interior defensive lineman who's still on a rookie contract. It's expensive, but it's also the type of aggressive move contenders sometimes make when they believe their championship window is open. Now, the other question is, would the Eagles even entertain that conversation? And to me, after them making Jordan Davis the highest paid interior defensive lineman, I don't expect the Eagles to be able to sign Jalen Carter as well, considering the amount of talent that they still have to pay on that defensive side of the ball and the contracts they already have on the offensive side of the ball. So this is the reason we're having this conversation. But this conversation really isn't just about one player. It's about roster construction. The Bengals are trying to compete in an AFC filled with elite quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and the fastest way to disrupt elite quarterbacks isn't just pressure. It's pressure up the middle. Interior disruption forces quarterbacks to play uncomfortable football, and uncomfortable quarterbacks make mistakes. Edge rushers will always get the highlights, but the teams that win championships control the middle of the defensive line. They collapse the pocket, and they disrupt quarterbacks, and they force offenses to play uncomfortable football. So if the Bengals truly want to maximize Joe Burrow's Super Bowl window, they may have to eventually think bigger than just simply filling roster holes, because the fastest way to beat elite quarterbacks in today's NFL is pressure right up the middle. Now, what do you guys think? Is this a bit of a pipe dream? If you guys have any other moves you should make before the season starts, go ahead and leave them in the comments. And if you like the content, like the video, subscribe to the channel. There'll be plenty more where that came from. And as always, Hoo Day.